Hi guys, Buildzoid here, and this is gonna be a vlog because I've been just kind of miserable the last couple days. So I did a lot of things, but I didn't do any of them to completion, which means I didn't really have anything that would worth making a video about, and I didn't really feel like doing some random PCB breakdowns. So instead, you're just gonna get a teaser for a bunch of content. Also, like, a part of the issue is that, oh, I've still not found the stylus for the drawing tablet. I really need to find that. Or we're going to be doing PCB breakdowns with like me using the mouse, and that's going to be terrible. But yeah, I didn't really want to do like a PCB breakdown as filler or something, because like, I don't know, it just like, I feel like I'm obliged to cover stuff that's like relevant in 2019, not stuff that was relevant in like 2012, even though I'm much more interested in that kind of hardware myself anyway. Just it's just, yeah, well, whatever. That aside, I've gotten my hands on a bunch of liquid nitrogen. I've burnt through quite a lot of it, so I got 85 liters. And I wanted to get 120, but I forgot to tell them that I have a capacity. No, wait, 130. Yeah, it's 130 I can store. So basically, I forgot to tell the company that does the liquid nitrogen deliveries that I want 130 liters. So I only got 85 because they were also delivering well, basically they didn't fill up enough to give me 130. It's that simple. So they gave me 85 liters. And I've already used a good chunk of them on the 7940X and the 7740X. Kind of hard to keep track of. So that's the 14 core and the 4 core. So the 7940X, so I've actually been, like, the cool thing is that now that I actually own the 7940X, I've kind of gone to town on the chip. So I've lapped the IHS, I've lapped the die, I've added extra capacitors, and actually I've lapped the die twice now, because when I lapped it the first time, I screwed up and the corners got rounded off. And they're still rounded off. So basically the corners of the die are lower than the center of the die, which is a problem for thermals, because basically the outer edge of the die now runs hotter than the center. Or at least I assume that's what's happening. Either way, like, the core-to-core deltas are not ideal. So yeah, I screwed that chip up that way, which is just great. Awesome. So I've lapped it twice, but before I lapped it the second time, I already tried to run it on liquid nitrogen, because I was really interested to see how it compares to that chip I had on loan from Alza in the past. It does 5.5 gigahertz Cinebench. It might do more. I didn't really manage to do more than that. Thing is just like, I don't feel like benching the chip more for Cinebench anyway, just because I don't think it'll, like, it won't really make a difference if I rebench those benchmarks, like, to me, as far as like points on hardware bot go. So basically, the chip probably can run like a 5.7, 5.6 for various 3D marks, and that's good enough for me, right? Which is right on par with what the previous chip did as well. So, well, it's about the same as what the previous chip did. I'm not sure how it does now that it's got, like, I added a couple capacitors, and it's on a, now that it's also been lapped a second time. I'm not sure how it compares to the previous setup. But yeah, previously it wasn't, exactly incredible. Now it might be a bit better. Who knows? We'll see. I'm not really in a rush to find out, because the thing about the 7940X is it absolutely chugs liquid nitrogen. Because it doesn't, like, even at idle, it burns a ton of power. So it's just a nightmare to run that chip. Especially when, it's just like, I have 85 liters, and it is like a short session on that chip can easily go through 30. Because, a 14 core, and it doesn't idle properly. So yeah. So I ran that. Other than that, we'll get to why this box is up here. Other than that, I've messed around with this thing right here. So this is an R9 290 that I got sent by a friend because it was dead. I figured out why it doesn't work. Well, I figured out why it doesn't work, and now it doesn't work even less, because it's like set up for e-power. Anyway, so basically what happened is, and I assume Like, I think I know what caused the failure. So there's a there's a bunch of, at least I assume that's the current sensing circuitry. Yeah, it's got to be that. So basically, which I didn't initially notice this, but basically there's like a small SMD component missing in that area. And that's part of the current sensing for that phase. So I assume that phase was running completely out of whack in terms of current balancing, because essentially what happened with the card is I had the card running and I was just observing what's going on, and I smell like overheating electronics. Okay, like there's a very specific smell you get when something gets like 150, high temperature basically. So I could smell really, really hot PCB essentially, right, and components, and I was like, is the VRM on fire or something? Oh, there wasn't anything visual, so I decided to touch it in my infinite wisdom. Burnt my finger pretty badly, but yeah, at that point I realized, okay, there's definitely something wrong with the VRM. So I threw a fan on the VRM and kept running the card, and I was like, well, let's just investigate what could possibly be wrong with it with the multimeter. And while I was doing that, the low side MOSFET of this phase right here, that one shorted out. So that explains what was going on, right? Low side MOSFET overheated, blew up. And it probably overheated and blew up because the current balancing was broke, like the current monitoring circuitry was broken. So I assume the controller just kind of decided that there's either no power going through that phase or something, and it blew that phase right up. So I removed the MOSFETs and basically had the card running in like 4-phase mode, and I was hoping that I'd be able to at least install the drivers. The issue was at that point that it would shut down. It wouldn't crash and hang. It would literally, like, the VRM would just shut down. So I assume it would detect some kind of issue and decide that it should stop running. So that's why right now it's prepared for e-power. And I'm actually really, well, I've been a bit more successful than last time I did this, because I actually got the memory VRM working. So the memory VRM right now runs. Other than that, there's an LDO I need to take care of over here. There's this voltage regulator on the back that I need to take care of, so that we need to get that running all the time. And then it's just a matter of feeding VDDCI in, which is why it removed that inductor. And of course, VCore has to be added back onto the card. And I'm not sure which power board I'm going to do it with, and I'm not sure when I'm going to do it either. I need to clean up the desk before attempting an e-power, because there's just not enough space to put anything on at this point. But yeah, I did have the card running for a bit. It just wouldn't install drivers, and it was shutting down the voltage regulator. So I assume it wasn't like the card was unstable. It was just like the voltage regulator tripping some kind of safety. So, yeah, hopefully with an e-power this starts working. If it doesn't start working, then, well, that sucks. But I think it should start working, because really the, like, low side MOSFET failing is a safe, like, that's a safe failure, because the low side MOSFET doesn't connect any voltage to the output. In fact, it drags the output voltage low. So, yeah, I'm not too, like, I think the silicon's fine. It's just the voltage regulator was screwed up. So, that's that thing. Where do I put it? Over there. Hopefully I get that working. Next, I started messing around with this 780 Ti again, because I was like, ooh, I'll totally run 2-way SLI on this with the 7940X, get some easy points. Realized that I don't have software voltage control for this at all, and decided that I'm probably going to do a vid mod on it. And then kind of started working on that and stopped midway. So that's why there's no video about that, because it's not finished. This thing, this thing, you may remember, is the 7970 3GB Vapor X that I repaired. As in, it previously had no display out. It now has display out, it still doesn't work properly. The voltage regulators shut down when you run Firestrike. Well, basically when the card tries to run Firestrike GT2, the voltage regulators shut down. So my theory on why that's happening is, basically the way the card is working right now is the voltage regulator for VDDCI is also powering the PLL, the PEX, so PCIe and display output rail. At least I assume that rail is combined, because it's like a low voltage rail, and it kind of has an impact on both of those things. So, because it's now powering, like, you know, like, it's now, like, basically I'm using one regulator to power two rails, and GT2 is causing crashing, causing the card to essentially just shut down. The theory is quite simple. The card is tripping over current protection, probably on VDDCI, and turning itself off as a result. And the reasoning is rather, like, I'm surprised that's actually happening, because I didn't think the OCP would be that low. But GT2 is, like, rather memory intensive, so it makes sense that when you, like, considering how the card is running right now is basically the voltage regulator that powers the memory controller normally now also has to power the PCIe interface and the display outputs. And I assume what happens is, like, it's just tripping over current protection and it shuts down when you load up the memory controller fully. The annoying thing is this has some weird AM113 voltage controller that I can't identify, so I can't remove the overcurrent protection. Which is not that's not a good way of doing things, but yeah, it's just like, basically right now it looks like I'm going to actually have to repair this properly, where I fix the, you know, the rail that stopped working, rather than trying to feed it off of another rail, because I don't have a data sheet and I have no idea how that controller works. So, because it's not even like, it's not even like I could compare it against other chips that I think are similar, which is what I do for a lot of other manufacturers. It's just like, oh, this is like the normal way this manufacturer implements this and this feature, or this and this function. So if I have another chip from them, I can, you know, look if the circuitry looks like I can check if that circuitry exists. If it does exist, well, it probably does the same thing it did last time. Why would it do anything else? And I can work with that assumption, and most of the time that works out fine. Sometimes it doesn't. But here, I have literally no idea who even makes that chip. So that is really annoying. So yeah, that sucks. And I'll either have to, like, I don't want to e-power this. I'm going to, like, I just have to fix the damn rail. Or, I mean, my other idea is that there's like a, when the memory controller hits full load, the other option is that, no, that's stupid. That's really stupid. Yeah, it has to be OCP. Stupid controller. Anyway, so that also doesn't work. So I didn't actually manage to get that quite as fixed as I was hoping it would be, but hey, could be worse, right? It could still not display anything. Finally, we have this here. So the other thing I used a bunch of liquid nitrogen on was the 7740X I have. So that's what's currently in this motherboard. And get this over here. So can you... there. You can kind of see in there. Alright, so board's plasti dipped orange. And the 7740X, of course, also has a lapped IHS. I didn't do anything to the die. I did have to redo the capacitor mod on it, because if you remember, like, I piled on a bunch of capacitor. Well, there's not that many of them. They're just really huge. So I added some, like, capacitors to the back of that CPU. Turns out when you apply like an LN2 pot worth of mounting pressure, it stops clearing the capacitors already in the CPU socket. So the first time around I tried to run that on liquid nitrogen, I actually shorted out the back of the CPU with the socket, which was great. So that was fun, right? That was really fun to diagnose. But I fixed that, cleaned up the mod, made it lower profile, and to make absolutely certain that doesn't happen again, there is now electrical tape inside the CPU socket to make sure that, you know, even if the clearances aren't correct, it's not going to be able to make contact. So I've run it like this on liquid nitrogen. And I tried it first with Crynaut, and basically I never got to full pop. It would always just end up cracking. I think the lowest I got was like minus 182 or 184, at which point I just cracked again anyway. So that was with Chronaut. Chip maxed out at like 6.4 gigahertz. Mostly because I didn't bother to test 6.5 and 6.6 didn't work. Like I was going up in steps of 200 at the time. So maybe 6.5 would have worked, but 6.6 definitely didn't, and 6.4 was the last thing I tested. Cracked the thermal paste like 5 times in a row, so burnt a whole bunch of liquid nitrogen, pulling the system up, then pulling the system down again. Tried everything from like lower mounting, I tried low mounting pressure, no mounting pressure, as in I didn't even have any kind of like mounting hardware holding the pot down. It was just like kept aligned by the mounting the rods that it comes with. So yeah, I tried a bunch of things like that. None of that fixed it. Basically, just awful. Didn't get any good scores. Never got anywhere with that. Then this stuff turned up. I got 10 packs of this from Corsair. And my initial reaction when this turned up was like, whoa, what's this garbage? Will I have to throw all of this out? Yeah, I mean, this isn't exactly confidence inspiring as far as the thermal paste goes. But I decided to try it out anyway, just because at that point I was like, well, it can't possibly be worse than the Cryonaut that I have on there, right? Like, at worst, this will, like, fail at minus 50, and that'll be the end of that. I won't even use that much liquid nitrogen with it. Turns out this actually works pretty okay. I managed to run a few loops of Cinebench at full pot. Eventually, it still ended up cracking when I started up Windows. So, yeah, but you know, it did run Cinebench for a bit at like full pot, which was nice. Yeah, I still didn't really get anywhere, and I cut that session short just because it was like supposed to be a quick test. And at this point, I've kind of decided that I am not going to use any more of the liquid nitrogen on anything except like a 9900K. Just because there I don't have to worry about the thermal paste cracking, because there's solder under the IHS, and that's like that's the part that's really concerning. Okay, I've not really had problems with on top of IHS like thermal paste condition. That doesn't tend to be too much of an issue, but under the IHS, it's an absolute nightmare. Also, if I ever run that 7740X, I think, I will be running that 7740X again, but next time I run it, I'm probably going to end up running it on the Kingpin Cooling Blue thermal paste, so the KPX, just because that's so far been the most stable in my experience. But yeah, this stuff is surprisingly, like, I was surprised that this didn't suck as much as I was expecting. And even, like, temperature-wise, it wasn't doing that badly, considering that it has, like, a really, really low thermal conductivity rate. Well, it's not super low, but it's pretty low. It's, like, 3.8 watts per meter Kelvin. But the thing is with thermal paste, what you have to keep in mind is that there's the conductivity rating is one thing. The other thing is, how does that thermal paste actually spread out when you apply mounting pressure to it, right? So if you have a thermal paste that's like 10 watts per meter Kelvin, and then, you know, under 10 kilograms of mounting pressure, or 15, which is kind of like normal CPU heatsink mounting pressures are sort of between 10 and 20 kilograms. You don't really want to, like, as far as I'm aware, the CPU socket can't actually withstand much more than that in most cases. So, anyway, so you're sort of between 10 and 20 kilograms of mounting pressure, and basically my question, like, the thing is just like, if you put 10 kilograms of mounting pressure on your 10 watts per meter Kelvin thermal paste, right, and you end up with a layer of thermal paste that's 0.01 millimeter thick, that's great. But if you take a thermal paste that's 6 watts per meter Kelvin, and that one crushes down to 0.005, right, which is half as thick, that one's going to get better temperature, better thermals, because it's half as thick, and it's not like, it's not half as low thermal, like the thermal conductivity isn't that much lower. So essentially, that's one thing to consider with thermal paste, and also why you don't necessarily always see that huge differences. I don't think I'm going to formally test this. I will I do plan to mess with it more, just because I do have 10 damn tubes of it, right? Like, I have a ton of this stuff now. So it's like, may as well use it, since evidently it's not that bad. So now I'm kind of interested to see how it does thermally, and yeah. So even though it's rated really low, I wouldn't pay that much attention to the the thermal rating. I mean, I don't even know what the rating for the Kingpin cooling blue thermal paste is. No idea. They don't specify as far as I'm aware. So anyway, that's that. So that's pretty decent. What else was there that I wanted to address? 780 Ti. Oh, right. Where is it? There it is. Cleaned this up. Yay! So this is something I picked up off of eBay a while ago. Was considering doing a PCB breakdown of it. Unfortunately, this thing is on LPDA VRAM. Like, I can't win. Right? It's just like, so far, every single one of my, like, high-end... high-end GPUs is on freaking LPDA. The Hall of Fame, LPDA GDDR5, because of why not? Why not have the worst possible VRAM on a card like that? That 290X Matrix, also LPDA. I've not yet checked my 290X Vapor X. I really hope it's not LPDA. I think this is on Hynix, though. I'm pretty sure this is on Hynix. The core sucks, though. Like, this thing has a terrible core. And I know that because it could run GT1. It just didn't run GT2. Core sucks. But that's no surprise. I think, like, honestly, the Vapor X cards are kind of awful. I don't know why I keep picking them up. Like, the 7970 Vapor X cards are pretty awful. I don't know why I keep buying them. But, yeah, what else was there? So... I think that's Hynix, so that's not too bad. But, and I think this might be on LPDA as well. No, this is on Hynix. Luckily, the 780 Ti is on Hynix, so that's good. So, yeah, that's kind of what I've been doing, you know, just messing around with hardware and not really getting anything all that useful done, unfortunately, so... Yeah, I have been managing to kind of, clean up the room in the process, so... I'll probably, you know, get some more useful content done soon, but so far it's just like, yeah, in between all of, like, basically other than that, I've just been kind of messing around and getting nowhere with all of the messing around, so yeah, that's kind of that. Video sucks, and I'm just gonna end it here because it's 22 minutes long, and it's already been enough of a awful piece of filler. I do hope I don't lose any subscribers over this. So yeah, actually, you know what you can do for me? I'd love to hear comments on, like, what kind of content. Well, I assume it's just everybody gonna be asking for more review stuff. Oh, right, I can tease this. I have pictures of the PCB of the Maximus 11 Apex. So we're going to have a PCB breakdown of that whenever I find the freaking stylus for the drawing tablet. I really have no idea where that went. And that's really odd because I never, like, put it away from this desk. Well, whatever. Yeah, no, well... The thing is like, I kind of want to know how many people would care if I started putting out more content about old garbage again. Because the funny thing is that I really don't care that much about new hardware. Mostly because it's all so expensive and it's just kind of the same thing over and over again. And, like, you can't BIOS mod the AMD cards, right? Like, they're steadily shutting that down. And quite frankly, I have been toying with the idea, oh, I could still pick up an RX 590, but you can do exactly, like, from an overclocking perspective, an RX 590 is functionally the same as one of these, except one of these costs way less. So, you know, that's kind of my outlook on that. Yeah, you know, and when it comes to, like, testing modern hardware, I mean, I just find it kind of boring a lot of the time. And I have also been messing around with, like, memory overclocking on the Z390 Master, which it's gotten better. So that's kind of a good thing. you know, is that the memory overclocking doesn't suck as much as it used to. I've gotten up to like 4266 megahertz on 32 gigs of RAM. I didn't actually manage, like, I didn't get around to testing it with like memory, a proper memory stress test, but it was at least posting, which kind of, which was like, that's pretty impressive, I'd say. And then other than that, I did also mess around with like the Maximus 11 Gene, but that was like ages ago, and I can't really remember any of that, so that's kind of that. Yeah. I'm so bad at like just organizing content into like production. So yeah, that's kind of it. Thanks for watching, I guess. Goodbye. Sorry for dragging this out so much. There's not really anything all that worth watching in this anyway. See ya!